University and begin our little foray into our temporary Beit Midrash until we build our real Beit Midrash. So this is our Beit Midrash style. The tables are a little bit wider than they're supposed to be, but Baruch Hashem, we're moving in the right direction. I want to welcome Rabbi Yaakov Glasser, who is here with us. Rabbi Yaakov Glasser is the Dean of the Center for the Jewish Future. Rabbi Glasser is the Rav of the Young Israel of St. Clifton. Most importantly for this community, Rabbi Yaakov Glasser's mother is a Chernotsky, and the family has deep roots in Linden, and as Bob Weitzman mentioned just a few minutes ago, yahrzeit plaques for Rabbi Glasser's great-grandparents are great-grandfather is here in our shul. So we're glad to welcome Rabbi Glasser home. We're happy to have you. But for me, my relationship with Rabbi Glasser goes back to the Beverlywood Minyan. I didn't know about Linden when I was growing up, but we had our Beverlywood Minyan, which was our little Friday night, and then it even grew to a Shabbos Mincha, Shabbos Marv little steeple in our Beverlywood community in Los Angeles. I don't think we ever dreamed that we would be here in Linden, and I would be introducing Rabbi Glasser to be our speaker for the evening. I did always think that he was going into Rabbanus. There was just something about him always that had that distinction. I was angling for the NBA. It didn't work out. So this was second best. But nevertheless, both of our parents were always involved in Jewish communal work. My parents more on a volunteer basis. Rabbi Glasser's parents not always volunteer, sometimes as professionals, but nevertheless we were always exposed to the importance of the klal, and that is likely a reason why we are where we are. So, Rabbi Glasser is our featured speaker for the evening. The title is The Menorah and Leadership from the Temple to the State of Israel. Rabbi Glasser.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Hess. It is a real honor to be here today. You good? Okay. I have to say, I've never seen Jews eat in such an orderly fashion at an event in my life. I walked in here, everybody's just like sitting where they're supposed to be. It's just beautiful. It's amazing. Yes, we did grow up together in Los Angeles. I always tell people that my parents eventually moved out to Jersey, and my siblings are all on the East Coast. And we always talk about the fact that if you were to ask us when we were in elementary school to name the states that we think we would end up living in order of expectation, I think New Jersey would have been like 53 on that list. After like Guantanamo Bay and Cuba, like somewhere would be New Jersey. But we all ended up coming home. We all ended up coming back to Jersey, and not only living in the community, but being part of building the community. And it really is a little bit emotional for me to be here. I actually, on the way, I'm a very nostalgic person. And on my way here tonight, I actually drove, thank God for Waze, right? I actually drove by, my grandmother lived on Sherwood Road. And my great-grandparents, I think, were part of the beginning of this synagogue. And my mother grew up here. I used to spend Shabbos with my grandmother. And Dr. Newstein used to walk me here to shul. He used to walk me here to shul because I was young and I wasn't going on my own. And what happened was we all grew up in Los Angeles, so every winter, Lila Chernotsky would go out and she would make snowballs, put them in individual plastic bags, put those plastic bags in a larger plastic bag, put those in the freezer, and then when myself and my siblings and Isaac's kids, who were also in California, would come in the summer, she would take them out, and in the middle of July, we would have a snowball fight right there on Sherwood Road, and the cars would drive by, and they would stop, and they would like why are people throwing snowballs on the... But that was it. That was our... So it's really amazing memories for me here. And I have to tell you that everything I am and everything I've been able to accomplish is really due to my parents. And my mother is a spectacular human being and a very, very huge presence and role model in my life. And she embodies the values of this community and was raised in this community and was very active in this shul. I think she was the NCSY chapter president, regional president in this shul in 1992. And it's very, very special to be able to be back here. It's very special to watch someone that we grew up together with in such a prominent leadership position and everything he's accomplished here in the community. And it's very well known, the growth of Linden, the growth of Anshe Chesed. It's something that's gotten around. I myself in Passaic have lost a couple of families to your shul. So thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. But thank God people graduate on to better and higher. So Baruch Hashem. But it's a great privilege to be here, and thank you so much for having me. And it's a great honor to be part of the beginning of your Beit Midrash program, and we'll learn a little bit together tonight. So we are on the precipice of the holiday of Hanukkah, and soon we will be walking the streets, seeing the menorahs in the windows. For those with small children or grandchildren, soon we will be out in the stores. No, we will not. We will be on our computers, buying, ordering, delivering, returning, buying again, delivering again, the experience of Hanukkah. And the truth is that it's very interesting. Of all of the holidays in the Jewish calendar, every demographic survey that's ever been done of the Jewish community identifies the celebration of Hanukkah and the lighting of the menorah as the most prevalent Jewish ritual that is observed across the spectrum of Jewish affiliation. It is not Yom Kippur, it is not the Pesach Seder, it is the lighting of the Hanukkah candles. And it is somewhat striking because the lighting of the Hanukkah candles are not a biblical mitzvah, but many sociologists attribute it to Hanukkah's good fortune to find itself in the context of a more larger cultural holiday season. And so Jews looking for their own resonance in this time of year of something meaningful, something impactful, something that they can own and portray and project out into the world to grab hold of the holiday of Hanukkah. I remember I was a few years ago walking in Mea Sha'arim in Israel, a very Hasidic neighborhood. I understand you're familiar with the concept. So we were walking in Mea Sha'arim, the Linden of Jerusalem, and as we were walking down the street, they had lots of stores that were selling presents for Hanukkah. So one of the stores had this great giant box of toys. And I walk up to the box of toys, and I see in the box of toys, there is a small figurine of Santa Claus. So I pick it up, and I say to the guy in my, Yeshiva high school educated Hebrew, Mazeh, which, nothing like $25,000 a year of tuition to get that. And he says to me, Zeh Chanukah Rav. This is a Hanukkah rabbi. So I looked at him and I said, Zelo Hanukkah rabbi. This is not a Hanukkah rabbi. Zeh Saint Nicholas. Right? He said, Ma zeh Saint Nicholas? I said, Hu nechnas lebayit derech hachimni. Kol derech hachimni, ve'kol ha'mishpacha yoshvim ve'notim lo ugiyot. So he says to me, oh, Kemo Eliyahu on Pesach. I said, not exactly, but somewhat. So we all know Hanukkah, it's got a cross appeal all over different experiences. I always tell people I'm always fascinated. One of the things I'm sure is common here is you like to give the kids Hanukkah gelt, right? So I tell you, it's amazing. 11 months a year, one of the 3 top things we all tell our young children not to do is do not put money in your mouth, right? Then comes Hanukkah, and the kid, the 4-year-old, is like, what do I do with this? And you're like, you eat it. What's wrong with you, right? But we know that even though most Jewish candy is surrounded by a very flimsy packaging, Hanukkah gelt is encased in a titanium casing that when you open it, you generally need a tetanus shot when it's done, right? And then you reveal this like anthrax-coated powder. You're not really sure exactly what it is, right? And then everybody's like, Hanukkah, it's got a cultural resonance. It's got a certain identity with it that is pervasive, that permeates our culture, that permeates our society. It's well known, and we're connected to it in many ways. So I'd like to share this evening some ideas related to the holiday of Hanukkah that are relevant to all of us. And I'd like to do so, I'd like to begin this journey by talking about a very striking and fascinating historical reality. And that is that we know the greatest miracle of the last century for the Jewish people is without question the birth of the state of Israel. A miraculous notion that in the midst of an area of the world that we're all familiar with, that is so antagonistic, that is so hostile to the presence of Jews, not only has a country, a Jewish homeland, been founded, been refounded, but it has developed in so many different directions, militarily, technologically, geopolitically, economically. It's just unbelievable. So in 1949, the state of Israel was only a few months old, and they realized that they needed a state symbol. Now understand, the state of Israel at the time was only a few 100,000 people. It was basically a very large shul, right? So, and we know how shuls go, right? So what did they do to decide what the symbol should be? They made a committee. So the committee convened, and the committee decided we would take suggestions. And we know generally what happens when committees take suggestions, right? You write down the suggestions, and now you have the suggestions, and then you do what you want. So the committee opened up 4 suggestions. If you look at source number 1 in your packet, and this was, if on the left side, was the hazmanah, was the announcement that anybody who wishes to contribute an idea that could become the seal of the emblem of the state of Israel could contribute such a suggestion. And on the left side, on the right side of that source number 1 are some of the suggestions that were advanced in the state of Israel at the time. None of these that are on the right side were the seals that were taken. However, if you look, one of the most common images that was suggested to become part of the icon of the state of Israel always involved what symbol? What symbol? A menorah. Very good, a menorah. And again, we understand a menorah, a Magen David, there are a few symbols that are just ubiquitous in Jewish life. So in the menorah was in many, many of the suggestions. And it was determined that they were going to incorporate the menorah into the seal of the state of Israel. And then the question became, what depiction of the menorah should they include? So there are modern-day artistic depictions of the menorah, and there are also ancient archaeological findings that portray the images of a menorah. So what images should they use? So Rashi, we're all familiar with Rashi, in his Perish on Chumash, Rashi describes the menorah, for example, as being a candelabra that we're familiar with in the Beit Midrash. And what did the bottom look like? The bottom had 3 legs. It was a tripod. That was the bottom of the menorah. And in fact, in the ancient manuscripts of Rashi, we even have an illustration that was included to portray the vision that Rashi had for the menorah. There were other archaeological finds, both in Israel and throughout other areas of the world, where menorahs were discovered that were thousands of years old. Depictions that were embedded in floors of ancient synagogues, on the walls of ancient synagogues, in ancient homes. And those are some of the archaeological finds that you see, the descriptions that you see in source number 3. And many of them have the menorah resting on somewhat of an elementary interpretation of it, but all of them have the classic tripod as the base, right? I guess they couldn't really carve it 3-dimensionally, and so it kind of looks like an upside down, like an M, but it's got a tripod base. Turn to the next page, and if you turn to the next page, you will see on the left side is the seal, is the final decision that they made. This is the seal of the state of Israel until today. And if we look at that menorah, it's a little bit peculiar. because it is a menorah, but it is not a menorah that mirrors the classic archaeological finds. Where does this description, where does this portrayal of the menorah originate? It originates, I'm sorry? Excellent. It originates on the Arch of Titus. The Arch of Titus, which is on the right side of source number 4, is a representation of Titus's conquest of Jerusalem in the year 70 AD, and Titus takes the menorah and many other relics of the temple. He brings them back to Rome, and it's the subject of much research and much debate among the scholars what in fact happened to all of these vessels, including what happened to the menorah itself. And there's a lot of research and a lot of interesting lore, some of which is probably more mythical, some of which may be more historically accurate, but that's the Arch of Titus. Fascinatingly, the Arch of Titus depicts the menorah not with the tripod, but with a multi-tiered base. If you look at the Arch of Titus itself, you see the base. And we know that that base was added by the Romans themselves. Because if we were to blow up this picture a little bit more, we would see that the symbols that are on the base are symbols that are related to Roman culture, in fact, Roman pagan culture. And the scholars discuss why they put on a base. They probably put a base on because they wanted to tour the menorah through Rome. They wanted to be able to have people see the menorah, so people would see this is the spoils of their conquest. And as a result, they end up adding this base, and that's the menorah on the Arch of Titus. Interestingly, the Israeli government at the time chose the depiction of the Arch of Titus as the menorah that they wanted to use for the state of Israel. And the question is, why would we immortalize a depiction that captures Judaism at its victimhood, Judaism at its conquest, in portraying the strength of the Jewish people at a moment where we are celebrating its renewal? The reemergence of the Jewish warrior, of the Jewish army, of the Jewish state, of the Jewish government. Why would we use a depiction that really sends the message that we were sent into exile, the depiction of the conquest of the Jewish people? Why is that so? And we're going to address that in a few minutes. So I included here, just for your own enjoyment, there were media reviews of the final depiction of the symbol. So you see the symbol on the top left over there. It has the olive branches and the menorah and Yisrael. This was in the newspaper Haaretz. And just to share it with you, the proposal, which owing to the hurried decision of the State Council has become the symbol of the State of Israel, is an aesthetic horror. Jews, if this symbol is raised in the coming days above the assembly and soon above the missions of the State of Israel everywhere in the world, it will be a demonstration of the international proportions of the lack of taste and lack of ascetic culture of the State of Israel and of its lawmakers. It is unnecessary to discuss the motifs that could have been used, and then it discusses its execution is vulgar, it's a poor copy of the menorah, complaining. So of course it was a controversial choice. And they portray it in the sensitivity and the positivity that only Israelis can, that we're very familiar with. So what we need to understand is, what is the menorah really all about? And what is Hanukkah really all about? And for that, we have to look back into our tradition, into our Torah, to try to appreciate what is the unique character of the menorah relative to really the rest of Jewish life. We're about to embrace a chag, a holiday that has embedded within it a symbol and a ritual that is so pervasive throughout our community, throughout our culture, throughout our religious world. Where does that uniqueness stem from? Where does it originate? So, join me. We're gonna work on this together. The Torah tells us in source number 6 in Parshas Bamidbar, "Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor." I'm going to translate everything we need to know here. God spoke to Moshe saying, "Daber el Aaron v'amarto elov v'haloscha es haneros el mul pnei hamenorah." So this pasuk in the Torah, this verse in the Torah, is speaking of the inauguration of the Mishkan itself, of the tabernacle itself. The Jewish people just built this beautiful new edifice that's serving as this sacrificial center for Am Yisrael, and they are going to dedicate it for the entire Jewish people. So we just built a new synagogue in Passaic, New Jersey, and actually we destroyed the old synagogue, and then we built a new synagogue. There was much more excitement about the destruction of the old one, but everybody got into it eventually, right? So when you build a new synagogue or you redo your Beit Midrash, so obviously you're going to have a dedication, right? And who participates in the dedication? So in the dedication of the Mishkan, each one of the 12 tribes sent a representative to participate in the dedication, and they offered a particular configuration of sacrifices of korbanos. These were the Nisim. However, says Rashi, Lama, and this is source number 7, Lama nisbecha parshas Menorah leparshas Nisim. Why is it that immediately after describing each representative of the Jewish people bringing their sacrifices, the Torah goes on to describe God telling Aaron HaKohen, I want you to know your job in the Beit HaMikdash is to light the menorah. I want you to know that's your job. That's what's special for you. So asks Rashi, why are these two things next to each other? What do they have to do with each other? So Rashi says, Lefi kishira Aaron Chanukas HaNesim, when Aaron HaKohen, when Aaron saw this dedication ceremony, Aaron became very despondent because Aaron was the high priest. He was in charge of this entire enterprise of the Mishkan. And he looked at this ceremony, and who was prominent in this ceremony? The representatives of the tribes, the representatives of the Shvatim. But Aaron himself had no role. It would be like dedicating your new Beit HaMidrash, and everybody gets to speak. The president gets to speak. The fundraising people get to speak. The donors get to speak. The other people get to speak. And all of a sudden, the rabbi is like, go set up the kiddush. That's it. We have enough speeches from the rabbis, right? You used up your time in Yom Kippur. You know what I mean? Finito. Finished. So Aaron HaKohen looks at that situation and says to himself, that's horrible. Kol shas dato shalem. He says, how is it that I don't have a role here? So God comes to him and God says, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So God says to him, Chayecha, by your life, Shelcha gedola mishelahem. Your role in this temple is greater than theirs. Why? She'ata madlik umetiv es haneros. Because you will prepare and you will ignite the lights of the menorah. In other words, the position, the role, the responsibility to go ahead and light the menorah each day in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Mishkan, was the substitution for your not being able to be involved in its ultimate inauguration. This is the compensation. You couldn't be involved in the inauguration, in the dedication. So what are you going to be involved in? You will be involved in lighting the menorah. So the Ramban, Nachmanides, in source number 8, asks, I don't understand. What does the menorah have to do with anything? There are lots of things that Aaron HaKohen gets to do in the Beit HaMikdash that no one else gets to do. Many things. He's in charge of all the sacrifices. He's in charge of the daily sacrifice, in charge of the carbon tamid, the ketores, burning the incense. There are lots of things that Aaron gets to do that no one else gets to do. So what do you mean that this is shalcha gedola mishelahem? That your role is greater than their role? That you somehow transcend their contribution to the Mishkan because you've been identified as being exclusively responsible for the menorah. So the Ramban suggests that this was a prophetic promise. It wasn't referring to Aaron HaKohen's personal role in lighting the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash, but rather it refers historically, in the future, it will be your descendants that through the story of Hanukkah reinvigorate and rededicate the Mishkan and become worthy of that unbelievable miracle of lighting the menorah and having it last for 8 days, even though it should only last for 1. Shalcha gedola mishelahem. They're only involved in the Mishkan at this one very moment, at this one pivotal moment. Your family, your legacy will be connected to the vitality of the Mishkan forever. You are going to be part of the story of the Jewish people. You are going to be part of the narrative of Am Yisrael. You are going to be part of the unfolding reality of the story of the Jewish people. And so therefore, Shalcha Gedolim Yishelahem. You'll be part of that menorah later on. But Rashi does not seem to be of this opinion. Rashi seems to be of the opinion that it's the menorah itself that makes up for it. So now we're going to study together a halacha in the Rambam, in Maimonides. Maimonides codified all of the laws that were extrapolated from the Talmud. And Maimonides codifies a law that I want all of us to look at, and you tell me what is troubling about this law given what we have just discussed. Says Maimonides, says the Rambam in source number 9. So the first part of the Rambam, the smaller font, is just the Rambam making the point in source number 9. This is in the Halachos of Biyas HaMikdash. That's the Rambam making the point that anybody who serves in the Mikdash itself has to be, what do you have to be to serve in the Beis HaMikdash? A Kohen, exactly. You have to be a Kohen, right? What if only your father was a Kohen? You're good to go, right? That's how you become a Kohen. So anybody who serves in the Beis HaMikdash has to be a Kohen. Now look at this, in the second where it's bigger. V'chein hadlakas haneros. So the Rambam says something amazing. The Rambam says there are certain things that in the temple could only be done by a Kohen. And there are other things in the temple that can be done by what's called a zar. A zar means anybody. I'm a zar, you're a zar. A zar is just a regular person, a non-Kohen. So says the Rambam, there are some things that can be done in the Beis HaMikdash by a zar. What's an example of something that can be done by a zar? Says the Rambam, V'chein hadlokas haneros k'sheira b'zari. The lighting of the menorah can be done by anyone. Then the Rambam addresses a very simple point, and that is that you want to tell me the lighting of the menorah can be done by anyone, but the menorah is located in an area of the Beis HaMikdash that is inaccessible to people who are not Kohanim. Not everyone could just walk into the Beis HaMikdash. There are certain areas that are restricted to people who are Kohanim. So how would somebody like me, who's a Yisrael, right? All I get is Shlishi. I can never get Rishon, right? When I moved to Washington Heights, you familiar with Washington Heights? So when I moved to Washington Heights, I was there for 7 years. So I once got Shishi I used to daven at a German shul, a Yakisha German shul. So they gave me the Aliyah of Shishi, the 6 Aliyah. So after the Aliyah, I was coming down, this old man comes up to me and he says to me, you know, in some kehilas, in some communities, Shishi, the 6 Aliyah, is the most choshev Aliyah. It's the most important Aliyah. I said, thank you so much. He looks at me and goes, not here. Right? God forbid I should have walked out of that German experience feeling good. So, I got it. So, anyway, to annoy him, I came late the next week. So says the Rambam, anybody can light the menorah. So how did they light the menorah? The Rambam says something amazing. He says, the Kohen prepares the menorah inside the temple, inside the Beis HaMikdash, and he carries it outside the Beis HaMikdash. So this is how it works. We're running the Beis HaMikdash. Mashiach comes, we're running the Beis HaMikdash. We want to honor a Mr. Goldberg with the honor of lighting the menorah. Mr. Goldberg is not a Kohen. He can't come into the Beis HaMikdash. But the Rambam said you're allowed to light the menorah even if you're not a Kohen. So what do? We put Mr. Goldberg outside the Beis HaMikdash. We carry the menorah outside the Beis HaMikdash. He lights the menorah, and then we carry it back in. That's what the Rambam says. Why is that so shocking? Who knows? Figure out. Why is that such a shocking statement of the Rambam? Anyone can light the menorah. Anyone can light the menorah. As long as it's dealt with from a spiritually logistical perspective, that we take it out and bring it back in, anybody can light the menorah. Why is that shocking? Why is that shocking? What did we say? What did Rashi say was the reason why this commandment of the menorah is given right after the dedication? What was the reason? What was the reason? Only a Kohen can light it. This is the gift you're giving to Aaron. You're telling Aaron, Shalcha Gedolo Mishelahem. You're telling Aaron that your role is greater than everyone else's role. And then what are you doing? You're telling him that why? How do you know your role is greater than everyone else's role? Because you get to light the menorah. That's what you tell Aaron. But then, when we open up the laws of lighting the menorah, what do we discover? Is it only for Aaron? No. Anybody can light the menorah. So that's not something special. If I tell you, it's like, right, sometimes you try to do this with your kids, right? You know, I don't know how it works in your home. In my home, the highest principle is not truth or, God. The highest principle is the principle of fair, right? You violate fair, you're done. You're done. So, right? You're absolutely done. So you give one kid something, and the Hanukkah comes up, and the parents have to make like a matrix and figure out, okay, this is more valuable than that monetarily, but they want this more than that, but they can't have this more than that. This is what it's basically, it's like a peace accord. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're sitting down with like multiple nations trying to get everybody on the same page, and maybe if you give this kid land for peace, and you give that kid, an embassy, and you put this here and that there, maybe like you could get through Hanukkah with everyone hating you only a little, right? And that's what Hanukkah is, right? So where does that come from? It has to be fair. You give somebody something, that's currency. But if you give them something that everybody else gets also, so we all know that's not a privilege, right? You tell the kid, I'm giving you a treat. Your treat is here, you can have a lollipop. Then the kid says, oh, thank you so much. Then the kid, wait a second, right? Because we are raising all our children to be UN diplomats, right? Wait a second. They also got a lollipop. Yeah, but they got a lollipop at shul. Like that's just a basic lollipop. There's an extra lollipop. Yeah, but they got an extra lollipop at shul, right? And now you're in it, right? You can't say you're giving Aaron Cohen the menorah lighting as his unique contribution to the world of the Mikdash, and then declare that anybody and anyone who's part of the Jewish people can also go ahead and light the menorah. That is our question. That is our question. And this Rambam is a very challenging Rambam for a lot of reasons. Stay with me for one moment. First of all, it takes a stand on a controversial issue in the laws of lighting the menorah, whether or not the obligation to light the menorah is Hanacha Osa Mitzvah or Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah, which means, is the obligation to light the menorah to facilitate its kindling, or is the actual ignition core to the mitzvah? Can you light the menorah back in your kitchen and then move it out to the window so it wasn't lit in a place where it's supposed to be lit? That's Hanacha Osa Mitzvah. Or Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah. No, you have to light the menorah in that window. You have to light it right there where everybody could see it. So from this Rambam, it would seem that in the Beis HaMikdash, they held Hanacha Osa Mitzvah, because they're lighting it outside the temple and then they're moving it into the temple. So that's a big question. The Minchas Chinuch asks that question. There are other challenges with this Rambam. But at the end of the day, this is what the Rambam writes. So that's our question. Our question is, how is this a unique contribution to Aaron when anybody could really do it? So here we go. The Jewish people in the desert were led by 3 siblings, right? A spectacular, amazing woman named Miriam, and 2 brothers, Aaron and Moshe. What do we know about Moshe Rabbeinu as a leader? What kind of leader was Moshe Rabbeinu? We know that Moshe Rabbeinu was a compassionate leader. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu was a humble leader. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu was a leader who took upon himself tremendous sense of responsibility. We know something else about Moshe's leadership style. And that was, he was what we call in the business a top-down leader. Right? The Torah tells us, if you look at source number 13, the Torah tells us when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai, that he had such a accentuated and elevated spiritual experience that Moshe Rabbeinu, literally, his face radiated such an intense illumination that people could not even look at him. That he had to wear like a veil. You couldn't stare at his face. Moshe Rabbeinu sat up on that mountain for weeks with no food and no water. Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Soloveitchik says, is the one-time exception in Jewish history. This never happens again. Where God tells the leader, you are so unified and subservient to the people that you should not even be with your family yourself. And every leader after that was a one-time exception. Leadership from that point on in our religion means you build a home, you build a family, you build a model of what it is you're trying to teach others. That's what leadership is. We don't want, right? We're in the week now of parent-teacher conferences. I always tell people I don't know, fathers always feel at parent-teacher conferences like they're an assistant parent. They never feel like they're the actual parent in this conversation. I always tell the story that I was once traveling a tremendous amount during the week of parent-teacher conferences, and I finally came home. And literally, the plane landed, went straight from the airport to the conference, and it was a red eye. And I was like, I wasn't red eye, but I was so tired. I was just killing myself to stay up through these conferences. Finally, get through the conferences. We come home. I have 3 girls and a boy. My son comes running up to me and he says to me, Abba, how are parent-teacher conferences? I said, oh, Chaim, we're so proud of you, and you're doing so well, and your teachers love you so much, and I'm so proud of you. And he looks at me and he goes, Abba, tonight we're the girls' conference. So we all know, right, that our job is not to be missing in action. Our job is to be embedded and enmeshed and involved in our families. But Moshe Rabbeinu was a unique leader. Moshe Rabbeinu was separate from the people. This was in stark contrast to Aaron HaKohen. Aaron HaKohen, the Mishnah tells us, if you look at source number 14, Hillel v'shamai kibru mehem, Hillel omer, having talmidot shel Aaron HaKohen. You should be like the students of Aaron. What are the students of Aaron? Oev shalom, rodev shalom, oev es abrios, mekarven l'torah. Aaron HaKohen was a man of the people. He was a schmoozer. He was the one who stayed late and talked to people and spoke to people. He was accessible. He was relatable. He was approachable. Aaron HaKohen was a leader that you could go to with a personal problem, with a personal challenge. He wasn't someone that you looked at and you said to yourself, this is such an angelic being. I can't even approach, I can't even see myself as being relevant to the orbit of their influence. I'm so distinct, I'm so below them. Aaron HaKohen was in the masses. He was within the nation. And the Perush HaMishnayos of the Rambam tells us that he had a tactic. His tactic was that he would roam the people, Pagabo Aaron Bashuk, and when he would meet somebody in the marketplace who was a Russia, who was somebody that was living a lifestyle that was incompatible with Torah values, what did he do? He didn't ban them. He didn't throw things at them. He didn't burn trash next to them. He looked at them, v'nasan lo shalom. He said to them, Shalom Aleichem. How are you? I'm Aaron HaKohen. This guy's a ganaf, and he's a loser, and he's everything you could imagine, and he talks during the rabbi's speech. Thinks Kiddush before it's time. He's everything you can imagine. Doesn't matter. Nasan lo shalom. And then the Perush HaMishnayos says that what would happen, this individual would be so empowered with a sense of confidence and a sense of validation and a sense of belief in themselves, because here, this man of such great stature took personal interest in him, that the next time he would arrive at a conflict, at an internal spiritual conflict, he would say to himself, how could I succumb to this temptation? When Aaron Nosan Li Shalom, when Aaron HaKohen believed in me. And so what would happen is, Aaron HaKohen would lift people up, not by talking down to them, by talking up. Aaron HaKohen would say to people, I believe in you. I think you could do great. I think you could be amazing. I think you could do, but I haven't been to shul in 6 months. So what? Start tomorrow. I believe in you. I think you're amazing. It must be because there's a reason, whatever the reason is. So what? I don't keep Shabbos. So what? You don't keep Shabbos. Look at all the things you do. So when you're sleeping, you keep Shabbos, right? That's why it's interesting, right? That's how you keep Shabbos, right? Right? So there are lots of things you do, right? Aaron believed in people. Now watch this. Follow me. Stay with me. They're building a Mishkan. They're building a temple. And Aaron HaKohen is told that you are going to be the leader, the administrator, the CEO of this temple. That's going to be your job. You're going to be the rabbi of this shul. The young Israel of Beis HaMikdash. You have the best pulpit ever, right? A lot of balabatim, right? You have the best pulpit ever. And Aaron HaKohen is looking at this roll, and what does he say to himself? He says to himself, I know what's happening here. I know what's happening. God is trying to turn me into a Moshe. My role is going to change now. Look, they inaugurated the Mishkan, they dedicated the Mishkan, and every other tribe had a role in participating in this dedication except for me. You know why? I'm out. I'm no longer within the people. I'm no longer part of the people. I'm no longer walking the streets and helping people believe in themselves. You know what I do now? I offer sacrifices. I slaughter animals and I sprinkle their intestines on altars. How inspirational, right? That's my role. I'm in charge of the most sanctified space in the entire world. I'm like Moshe on top of the mountain. My face is going to glow. No longer walking the streets and saying, Pogabo Aaron Bashuk, V'nasado Shalom, it's over. And that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to him and he says to him, no, Aaron, you don't understand. You don't understand the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash. You don't understand the purpose of a synagogue. You don't understand the purpose of a Jewish house of worship. You don't understand the purpose of a Jewish house of study. You think that managing this Mikdash means that you're now top down. That's not what it means. You know what your job is? Your job is to stand in that temple, to assemble and to prepare the radiance of the menorah, and then to take it out of the temple and bring it to the people. Your job in Judaism is to live a life of values and sanctity and beauty and holiness, but not to entrap it within the environment of yourself, to bring it out and to empower others. You're not stopping your role. Shelcha gidola mishelahem. Your role is so transcendent of this, because ata madlik u'meitiv esanerus. You get to illuminate the Jewish people. You get to take it out of the Mikdash into the larger world. And this is where the meaning of Hanukkah becomes so important for diaspora Jewry, and becomes so important as part of our ultimate anticipating road towards redemption. And that is that we know the Gemara tells us, if you look at source 16, the Gemara tells us that the laws of Hanukkah have 3 tiers, right? Tier number 1 is the basic mitzvah, Ner Ishu Beisel. 1 candle per home. That's it. 1 candle per home, you're done. You light a candle, and you sing Moses Tzur, and then you fight it out the place, right? And then we gamble. Right? That's it. 1 candle per home. Then the Gemara says, let's say you want to be Mahadri, right? We don't just want to do the basics, right? We gotta framacht it up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's go, shut up, right? So give me the Mahadrin. The Mahadrin is Ner L'Chol Echad B'Yad. Each person in the home lights a candle. Individuality. Each person has an expression. What's Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin? Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin means we're Mosif V'Holich, according to Beis Hillel. We elevate the holiday. We go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8. What do you see from this Gemara? The purpose of this holiday is to begin the concentration of the spirituality within the home. The home as a defining entity, as an environment, as a isolated ecosystem of spiritual life. From there, we focus on the individuals that are part of that home. And from there, we focus on their growth. And the ultimate message of this holiday is to do what with this menorah? To put it in the window, so that the values and ideals and beauty of that home radiate out to the rest of the world. The secret to Jewish continuity is to not just care about myself, but to care about others. To not just be a Moshe, who's developing my own spiritual intensity, but to take that success, to take that magic, to take that power, and to illuminate the rest of the world, to make a difference, to make an impact. Tosfos points out in Sukkah that Menorah is the only mitzvah where we don't do this so much anymore. In the times of the Talmud, you lit the menorah in your home. If someone was walking outside and saw your menorah, they would also make a bracha. They made a bracha on your lighting. There's no other mitzvah like that. You don't make a bracha on watching someone eat matzah. Maybe you make an asher yotzah, watching someone eat matzah, right? You don't make a bracha on watching someone eat matzah. That's not. You don't make a bracha on watching someone shake a lulav. You don't make a bracha on watching someone else, eat milchigs on Shavuos, right? What do you make a bracha? It's only one mitzvah. And when you watch someone else do the mitzvah, you make a bracha. It's called the birchas harot. And the reason you make the bracha is because part of Hanukkah is to instill a sense of motivation and inspiration in the world around us, in the community around us, to care about what's happening beyond the confines of our near Yeshiva. And that was the role of Aaron HaKohen, the role of projecting what we're about to the rest of the world, to the rest of our people, to matter to someone else. And that is the leadership of Aaron, and that is why the menorah is so unique. It's the only time in a year where it's the only mitzvah we have, where we do not try to keep it exclusively within the confines of our community, right? We have a Seder, we might invite other people to the Seder, but it's a home Seder, a shul Seder, right? I go to hotels for Pesach. That's one of these Pesach hotel companies, where they serve you a petting zoo on a buffet. The goose in the duck and this, and they lift up the goose around the buffet with one. Like it's an unbelievable, right? We get into the Avdos, slavery experience. But we don't, it's not what we do. We keep our mitzvahs to ourselves. That's what we do. Hanukkah is about the notion that our values and our experience and who we are is something that should matter to the rest of people. And that is what keeps the Jewish people who they are. What keeps the Jewish people who they are is recognizing that we have our home and it's distinct from the street. It's distinct, but at the same, you can't light the menorah in the street. You would not fulfill the mitzvah to light the menorah in the street, except for Chabad. Right? You would not fulfill the mitzvah. Right? You would not, because you're supposed to have a home to light the menorah. But at the same time, you would not fulfill the mitzvah if the only people who saw your menorah was the people in your home. You also don't fulfill the mitzvah. The mitzvah is fulfilled when other people are inspired and uplifted from seeing this amazing. So why does the menorah of our precious Medinat Yisrael come from the Arch of Titus? Because the Arch of Titus is the most ironic depiction of Jewish exile in the history of the Jewish people, the history of the world. Because the most defining image in this picture is the iconic object that captures more than any other object that they could have grabbed, more than the Aron. More than the Aron. Many more Jews light Hanukkah candles than sing Vayehim and so Aron. Many more. More than the Shulchan, more than the Mizbeach. The item, the object that symbolizes the continuity of the Jewish people and their ability to transcend the challenges of exile and emerge with a redemptive posture towards a future is the menorah. And so when Hashgacha had it, that when Providence had it, that the Jewish people were going to immortalize an image in the framework of an object, of a symbol for the future of the state of Israel, what image did they use? Not just any menorah. They used the menorah that symbolizes the exile of the Jewish people. Because the answer is that the eternality of the Jewish people is encapsulated in the meaning of that menorah. Because that menorah is the notion that we have a Ner Yishubeso, that we can continue to build and to grow, and that we can do so Lifarsumei Yisrael. We could do so and impact and influence and inspire the rest of the world. And that ultimately is the message of Hanukkah. And that is why Aaron is told, this is the most important piece. And that's what we think about when we stand together this coming week, Sunday night. Right? Sunday night. And we light the menorah. We have to look around. And we have to ask ourselves, look at this beautiful Jewish environment, saturated with Torah learning, with mitzvos, with people, with love, with a sense of passion for Judaism, with a sense of care and concern, with all of the values that define my home, that came from this town. When we look around and we see all those things, you take a minute, first of all, you thank God for being in such a space, for being in such an environment. And then you look out the window and you ask yourself, what am I going to do to bring that love and that illumination to others? And that is the ultimate message of Hanukkah. Arsune Nisa, to share your Jewish story, to share your Jewish inspiration. Please God, we should all be blessed with continued health, continued capacity and inspiration and amazing leadership to be able to not only nurture our own internal mikdash, our own internal bias, our internal home and sanctuary, but to be able to do so from a disposition that reaches out and shares that message and inspires others within our people and others beyond. I wish you all an amazing Hanukkah.
I want to thank Rabbi Glasser again for a wonderful and enlightening year on Hanukkah. Two things, but yes, I'll be here all night. Two things. Number one, just want to thank the Yeshiva Institute of Jewish Learning for sponsoring our event and program for the year. If you're interested in continuing to contribute to our Yeshiva Institute, you're certainly welcome to see Michael or Josh or Norma or myself. In a couple minutes, we're going to daven Marav. I think we'll try to daven in the main sanctuary, probably then the chapel is probably too small for us. So we'll be in the Marav in the main sanctuary in a few minutes. Hopefully 2 minutes.